Okay, I think the trickle of folks joining is starting to slow down a little bit, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Um, but as folks trickle in, the meeting is being recorded, so nothing will be missed. So yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for coming today. Before we begin the presentation, I want to offer a couple notes on interpretation. Um, so we are offering Spanish interpretation during our meeting today. We are not offering American Sign Language today because we did not have any requests, so that's not available for this meeting, but Zoom does offer captions, but that will have to be enabled on your end. So to turn on captions, you can click the More button or the three dots at the bottom of your Zoom screen, depending on your device, and you can make a caption selection. So first I'll read the instructions for joining the Spanish interpretation channel in English, and then a Spanish interpreter will read them in Spanish. So we have simultaneous interpretation today. English speakers may need to select English as their language. To access Zoom interpretation from a computer, you'll click the globe icon located at the bottom of the screen, and you can choose English or Spanish. To access Zoom interpretation from your smartphone, you can click the three dots above where it says More on the bottom right side of the screen, choose Language Interpretation, choose English or Spanish, and then press Done on the top right side of the screen.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. Interpretación simultánea al español disponible. Los hispanohablantes deben seleccionar su idioma. Entrando a Zoom por computadora, haga clic en el símbolo del globo terráqueo en la parte inferior de la pantalla. Selecciona español. Apague el audio original para solo escuchar una voz. Entrando a Zoom por un teléfono inteligente, haga clic en los tres puntos encima de la palabra More o más en la parte inferior derecha de la pantalla. Selecciona Interpretación, selecciona Español. Haga clic en Done o Finalizar arriba y del lado derecho de la pantalla. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and get started. So good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today for our work group meeting on the Access Clean California program. My name is Catherine Canepa, and I'm going to lead today's discussion. We'll be having a presentation from the Access Clean California program administrator, Grid Alternatives, as well. So I'd really like to thank them, as well as my colleagues at CARB, to join me in helping make sure everything runs smoothly this afternoon. Today's meeting is considered an implementation work group, which means that this meeting is outside of our annual funding plan process, and this focuses on discussing changes and updates in regards to implementing a current program. To provide a little brief background and more context for those who may be less familiar with CARB's processes, we usually kick off the funding plan development process in June every year with a formal workshop after legislators pass the annual state budget. Over the course of a few months, we collaborate with stakeholders and communities, holding several workshops to discuss ideas in order to develop the draft funding plan. In late August or early September, staff consider all of the feedback to finalize the proposed funding plan for public comment period and eventually present to the CARB board hearing in November for their consideration and approval. After the board approves the plan, staff begin to implement the changes to projects or programs that the board approved. This process includes holding implementation work groups to obtain feedback from the public and stakeholders. Although there were no particular policy changes for the Access Clean California program in this year's funding plan, and there's no new funding, we wanted to provide a quick update on the status of the project and, more importantly, discuss a proposed change in the program implementation process. So a couple quick details before we get started. Today's meeting materials, including the agenda and slides, are on CARB's Low Carbon Transportation Incentives webpage. My colleague Adelina will share that link with you in the chat. In about 2 weeks, we'll post the recording of today's meeting on the page as well. If there are disruptions on the Zoom for any reason, including malicious intent, we'll immediately end the meeting and send out a notice to reschedule. Unfortunately, we can't allow anonymous participants for security reasons, so please make sure your name is clear on the Zoom platform. Now we'll get into today's agenda. So today's topics include the purpose of today's work group and background on the program, a program overview and updates from the administrator team, Grid Alternatives, proposed change to program implementation, time for questions and answers from the audience, and wrap up and next steps. There will be 2 opportunities built into today's presentation for your live feedback and questions, and my colleague Violet will help us during the Q&A sessions. You can also email us your questions or comments to the Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov email address. That'll be shared in the chat, and we'll try to answer those questions during this meeting as well. So please note that all times for this agenda are approximate. The meeting is scheduled for 2 hours, but it's likely that we'll cover all the topics sooner. And if there's no questions, we'll conclude early. As many of you know, the Access Clean California program is administered by Grid Alternatives, who employs a team of dedicated staff and outreach partners to ensure that the program operates towards its intended goals. I would like to ask the project team to quickly turn on their cameras so that folks in the room can see who's behind the Grid Alternatives logo. Thank you all so much. Cool. So these folks have been with us since 2018, and they've been offering support for applicants who utilize CARB's suite of vehicle purchase incentive programs. And this includes programs like CVRP, Clean Cars for All, and the Financing Assistance for Lower Income Consumers program. The purpose of today's work group is to provide an update on the Access Clean California program and some of its successes and lessons learned, and to propose a change to program implementation that will help us deepen the equity impacts of this program. So we're hoping to get your feedback on this proposal today. First, I want to provide a little bit of background on the project. So Access Clean California was developed in response to several recommendations from the SB 350 barriers study. The three recommendations were to provide targeted outreach and technical assistance for low-income residents, to develop a single application tool for consumers to access incentive projects such as Clean Cars for All, CVRP, and financing assistance for low-income consumers, and thirdly, to better coordinate community-based outreach efforts to increase program participation. The intent of the Access Clean California program has always been to streamline access and coordinate outreach for clean transportation incentives in priority communities. $22.675 million have been allocated to date. That includes $5 million from the most recent solicitation, which was awarded to Grid Alternatives. The program has been administered by Grid since 2018. The first pilot phase of the project began in 2018 and consisted of two main components. First, the development of a statewide network of outreach partners, and second, a streamlined application web tool, along with case management to support applicants in using the web tool. Grid's outreach partner network consists of community-based orgs throughout the state that serve priority communities. They currently have contracts with 31 organizations. These organizations contract with Grid and help get the word out to their communities about CARB's different incentive opportunities by hosting or attending events such as farmers markets, ride and drives, and other community events. To help get applicants started in the application process, they support people in using the Benefits Finder tool, which is a streamlined tool which allows folks to put basic information about their income and place of residence and get a customized list of incentives they qualify for. The case management team supports applicants once they've used the tool, identifies which programs they want to pursue, and are in the process of applying. Over time, the case management team has continued to adapt to what applicants need and to grow the number of resources they offer for walking folks through the often complex application processes for the different programs. Also in the pilot phase of the project, Grid started a capacity building grant program for community-based organizations, which was intended to provide stable funding and to help build technical skills among organizations that were led by or served Black and tribal communities, and to better support them in navigating the state funding landscape to better amplify their community's needs. Participants in this program were situated to become Access Clean California outreach partners if they wanted after completion of the project. To provide just a little bit more detail on the streamlined application web tool, also known as Benefits Finder. So this web tool is now called Benefits Finder, and it was originally envisioned as a universal application for all of the CARB consumer-facing incentive programs. It was otherwise known as the One-Stop Shop. This was also the original name of this program and what it's most known for. Over time, a true one-stop shop was determined to be infeasible due to a number of challenges. These included political barriers, as well as challenges with completing complex back-end technical integrations from program administrators who all use different systems. As you may know, each of the CARB incentive programs is run by a different administrator who has a grant agreement with CARB. For example, the Drive Clean Assistance Program is run by the Community Housing Development Corporation, or CHDC. Different air districts across the state run various Clean Cars for All programs, and Access Clean California is run by Grid Alternatives. CARB is not the only agency who's attempted a universal application. The California Public Utilities Commission, or CPUC, led a working group to look into a universal application system for some of their programs to better understand what was possible. It was ultimately determined to be infeasible due to technological and political barriers. And over time, the working group realized the best they could do was a concurrent application system, which is a combination of lead generation and streamlining steps where possible to create better program referrals between different administrators. So essentially, the concurrent application system is a fancy referral system. Our efforts to try to make our one-stop shop work yielded kind of the same finding. Because there are many administrators in charge of running CARB programs, there were data security concerns with sharing client information between administrators. Many program administrators were hesitant to give up control of their data, and it was difficult to get full buy-in and full cooperation from everyone. We tried for at least 2 years to find solutions that would be acceptable to all the program administrators. Over time, we realized that we were spending a lot of time and weren't making adequate progress, and we reached an impasse to moving forward. So we made the call to compromise to ensure that the Access program could continue to move forward. With extensive effort put into developing a centralized application to no avail, and after hearing stakeholder and applicant feedback that there were high needs in other areas, the team decided to prioritize other components of the project, such as the statewide network of outreach partners, but still explored how to streamline the application process for applicants, and that's how centralized income verification came to be. So centralized income verification was intended as a compromise and an interim step between the Access Clean California team and the program administrators. The idea was that having income verification happen in one place would simplify the process for participants and better facilitate stacking of incentives because the administrator team could support applicants in understanding which programs were eligible for stacking. The way it currently works is that the Access team takes income documents from participants and verifies that they've met the requirements for the programs that they're interested in. Then they send them on to the individual programs with a letter noting that they've been income verified. Over the years, the complexity of the individual programs that Access routes participants onto means that the other program administrators sometimes need to conduct follow-ups on the documents. So often income verification is happening more than once. In addition, stacking is less relevant with the Clean Vehicle Rebate Project closed, as CARB's other purchase incentive programs have less stacking capability. I'll note that the sunset of CBRP and combining the statewide financing assistance program and Clean Cars for All into one program, which is the Driving Clean Assistance program now, that was a big part of the effort to centralize program administration and make it more streamlined for participants. So please keep all this background in mind. And before we go into the next part of our presentation, we'll transition over to the Grid Alternatives team to provide a quick program update and share some of the progress that they've made over the years. After this, there will be time for questions, so please hold your questions until then. And then we'll share the program updates that we're proposing. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and turn it over to you, Taylor.
All right. Is everybody able to see my screen okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Well, hi, everybody. My name's Taylor Steben. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a senior program manager at Grid Alternatives, working on the Access Clean California program. And as Catherine said, we're here to just sort of give a bit of a program update on where we've been and where we are now. So as Catherine mentioned earlier, Access Clean California, originally called One Stop Shop, was really created out of the SB 350 barrier study, which directed CARB to examine barriers to low income residents in order to increase access to zero emission transportation and mobility options. And to develop recommendations on how to address those barriers. So, from the get go, Access has always been oriented as an equity program at heart. As we've grown over time, throughout our 3 grant cycles so far, over 50% of our total budget has gone directly to outreach and technical assistance capacity building work. As Catherine mentioned, that's a really big part of what we do at Access. And so that's where we've put a lot of our resources, both financial and then, staff time and energy as well. Um, Over the course of the project, we have had some shifts. Some of these Catherine sort of already alluded to. A big one was the movement from a universal application to centralized income verification. Another was the build out of the technical assistance and capacity building program. That was a piece of feedback that we got from the outreach partners that a lot of folks needed that capacity building and technical assistance work in order to be able to participate in ours or other outreach partner networks around clean mobility work. And then also the creation of the case management team, which was not originally part of the initial launch of the One Stop Shop. But again, through feedback that we got primarily from outreach partners, we were hearing that clients really needed that extra human touch in addition to just the sort of web presence. So now today we have what we call our 3 pillars of access. So that's the web platform, our outreach work, and our case management team. And those 3 pillars are working together to achieve our equity goals. So with that, I'll pass it off to Jasmine to talk a little bit more about our outreach work.
Beautiful. Thank you, Taylor. Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Rocha. I am the, oh gosh, my title has changed. I'm still getting used to it. The CBO Partnerships Manager for the Access Clean team. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm happy to be here with y'all today. So this is just kind of a look at how the Outreach Partner Network is sort of structured and the way that we do our work. So it's really just like the Outreach Network has really operated as an outreach equity center with equity-centered strategies. We have trust-based communication and engagement between the Access Clean team and our outreach partners. We have a very tailored and curated approach to outreach equity-centered strategies that are specific to each partner's communities and their priority audiences and communities that they serve. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And then we also have technical assistance and capacity building, which we alluded to and Taylor spoke to about how partners really were asking for that. That sort of allows these grassroots, smaller organizations to really engage in the clean mobility options space. And from that work, we have grown to about 31 community-based organization group that reaches across multiple regions of California, as you can see on this map that sort of generally touches on each of the areas that we're in and we're reaching. Next slide. And then from sort of all of this work and this collaboration that we've had in this network, where we've been able to consolidate education and outreach materials that are culturally and linguistically relative of diverse communities. We modeled a needs-based approach by working with trusted community organizations and institutions that have diverse outreach partnerships and communication networks for sharing information, challenges, and best practices. And then we have multi-form outreach partner engagements, like showing up in CARB spaces, showing up in access spaces, and other CMO spaces to support feedback and input related to programs, program design, funding plans, task forces, etc. And just important feedback that we've generally been able to curate over the past few months have been reflective of improvements and that partners and clients would like to see across CARB related programs that aren't just access, but like the e-bike incentive program, driving clean assistance program, and then concerns about equity, accessible information, program planning and implementation, and needs-based processes and prioritization for frontline communities. And with that, I will pass it, I think, either to Taylor or Celeste, whoever's going to present the web platform element of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine. So after folks come through the Outreach Partner Network, they get directed to our web platform. And so this is where we host our benefits finder tool. So that's a tool that folks can use where they enter some basic information about where they live, what type of clean mobility technologies and options they're interested in. And then it'll provide them with a list of incentives that they likely qualify for and can apply to. So we found that this tool is really, really popular and important for folks, especially for low to moderate income households. So over the course of the program, we've had over 19,000 Benefits Finder users. And the self-reported average household income of those users is 270% of the federal poverty level. So for folks who aren't quite as familiar with that measure, often for equity programs, it's like a 300% federal poverty level cap to participate in those programs. So the folks that we're serving are primarily low to moderate income and the sort of core target audience of access and other equity programs. Where we've seen some challenges on the web platform are around income verification. So out of those 19,000 Benefits Finder users, only 1,500 have gone through and been successfully income verified. It's a relatively small number of folks. And then we also collect feedback from all of our clients at various points in the process, and we record where in the process they're giving us that constructive feedback. And 32% of client constructive feedback comes during what we call the e-signature or income verification stage. So we're hearing from clients that that's a place where they're maybe struggling or tend to get stuck and have feedback for us. So that's been a sort of focus, is trying to figure out how to improve that client journey, particularly at that point in the process. And that is where our case management team often comes in, is during and after the income verification process, but throughout the whole client journey. So I'll pass it over to Celeste to talk a little bit more about that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Celeste Gordon. I'm the Senior Community Care Manager for Access Clean California, and I go by she, pronouns. So very happy to be here with everyone. So how we start talking about our work is we talk about the value add that our case management team offers, which is quite unique and different from a standard case management team. And what we say is that we advocate, we speak up for clients when they need that. We demystify this application process, not just for Access, but all of the program administrators that we work with in those programs. We expand on the outreach of the work of the outreach partners. So we're a continuation of all of that great community work that's happening in priority communities. We fill a gap when program partners are challenged to. We're able to step in on their behalf and inform on their behalf. And we utilize that product and we inform on the equitable improvement through all of this case management that we're collecting and sharing and improving on. And we align with program partners so that we can together work with other case management teams to make sure that those clients that need that extra touch or even just extra follow-up happens. So can we go to the next slide, please? So just in 2024, we've tracked 914 clients. We've placed 853 calls. We've sent over 1,300 texts. And we collected all of this feedback, over 700 pieces of data points. And we use that for continual improvement from the moment clients come until the end of their journey with us. And what we like to say is we never give up on clients. So yeah, fine, next one. So just to orient a little bit, most folks are familiar with this client journey that has been in place from early on for a few years now, since the case management team has been in place. And of course, you know, as other people have already spoken about, clients will hear about our program, they'll come to our platform, they'll start their application. And in this, if you look in this phase 3 with the income verification, you know, that's where a lot of these confusions take place, where clients might start on the program website and then come to us and they'll get confused about that. Or, you know, there's confusion around when program administrators ask for more income around loan applications. So there's confusion around there. And again, all of those things that Catherine brought up earlier around, you know, hesitancy about collaborating around that income verification phase. Now, if you look at 4, folks like to think about this as application handoff. And what we point out is that's really a misnomer. This is, we don't hand off the application. Our work doesn't stop there. That's actually where our work starts, and where the most value add we bring to the table is after income verification. And that's making sure that any client has any type of support they need to make sure they get to the finish line. So we just want to point that out, that many folks think of this as, well, they're done with applications, so now they're working with the program administrator. And really, that's where the bulk of our work takes place. And we see that in the feedback. Over 60% of our work happens in that area, making sure the client has everything they need. Okay, next slide, please. These are all the different things that we've put in place. Again, Catherine mentioned this earlier, based on feedback that we've gotten from different clients and how we can make that process easier. So post-income, well, even pre-income verification. So we're informing on all of the different programs, not just one. We're communicating with those clients across the entire journey, from the time they get to the platform until they get their benefits. We're sharing the needs between all case managers. We're in touch with case managers and speaking with them, and we're updating each other around where that client is in the process. We reinforce messaging on behalf of the program administrators and help with the logistics around that. We provide next steps through making sure folks have the links and the materials, and they know exactly what that next step is post-income verification. So who they have to go to, what does that email subject heading going to look like, screenshots, things like that. We do email follow-ups and text messages on behalf of programs. And we even send surveys ahead to make sure if clients have been on a wait list, for example, that we'll do a survey to make sure they haven't purchased a car, so we're not unnecessarily pointing them in the wrong direction. We make all of these feedbacks that you're looking at right now have been based on feedback, all of these actions are based on feedback that we've gotten directly from clients or work that taking place with clients. When we see repetitive confusions, we'll make changes. And we have tip sheets or hacks that we create for clients when they need. We've even done video calls with them and have a type of a help desk where they can call. Many times clients who have low technical skills might need that. And we're continually updating our interest list so that folks know where they are in the process if they're waiting or have a question. And we've even done document uploads with clients to make sure that they get those uploaded properly and in the proper format. Next slide, please. So what we like to do also is just present you, this is a sample of a client profile. It's not an atypical profile. We all know these clients who need the extra support, just to give an idea of the type of support that we're offering in these cases. So if you look here, we're calling this person Sally, and the PA identified that this person was a high need client, and if we could take the lead on this. So this client had moved very frequently, and so tax verification was quite tough just to confirm her address from the get-go. There was a very tight deadline to get this application in. She was very confused with other institutions, not even just with us and one PA, but various program administrators. The financing institution had lost her password, so she was really struggling with trying to prove that she had taken those courses that she needed to take. She had a very unclear understanding of how online banking works, so we had to, kind of step in and think through that with her so that she could communicate how her bank account was working, and her paperwork had been misplaced as well. The client also, because of the trust she had with us, she identified a lot of client barriers. This is also something very common we see. Clients will disclose information about their personal life, and she had all of these things going on in terms of caregiving for a fragile mother, children with special needs, low tech skills. She had reported very extreme family loss and trauma, and also self-reported PTSD. At the same time, we want to also emphasize she was very resilient, resourceful, and really determined and committed to work towards this goal in collaboration with us. Next slide, please. So this is the follow-up that took place with this particular client. So we ended up sending 15 email exchanges with the PA team. We sent the application for her 3 times and had 21 different resubmitted documents. emails and text messages on next steps, checking up with her even until the last minute before purchase. She had a deadline for purchase, and we wanted to make sure she was clear and remembered that. We sent curated emails on behalf of program administrator. Again, we use this application kind of hack tip sheet, specially designed for her. 2 video calls. We sent over 200 SMS messages, 50 emails, and 33 case notes. And so this, what we call this winning strategy, was this high level engagement to really foster her own agency and autonomy. The programs exchange all client journey intricacies, so that we think that that's a very important process in doing that, so that we have the information, and so does the program administrator, around how our processes and procedures work. And having ongoing staff communication, debriefs with both teams to inform each other moving forward. And we like to happily say that Sally ended up purchasing her car in November of 2024. That's it. So thank you for listening, and that's the end of our presentation for now.
Thanks so much, everybody. As Catherine mentioned, we'll have a couple opportunities during today's session for questions and feedback. I also just wanted to offer that the Access Clean California team will be at the CARB Clean Transportation Equity Symposium, or Equity Incentives Symposium on April 10th. We'll have a table there, so folks are welcome to join us there to share any questions or feedback that they might have. I've also listed our email and our website contact us page for anybody who might have follow-up questions or feedback for us. Thanks so much. With that, I will pass it back to Catherine.
Thanks so much, everyone, for doing that presentation. That was great. Let me get screen share back up. Awesome. So now we have some time for comments and questions. So if you do have any questions about anything that's been shared thus far, we do invite you to ask those now. Please note that if a question is asked that could be answered by the rest of the presentation, we may hold off on that question until the second round of Q&A. So for now, if you have a comment to share or a question, please raise your hand in the Zoom. For those calling by phone, you can dial #2 or #2. On Zoom, you can click on the React button on the bottom bar of the screen. It has a little heart for the raised hand option. Once you're called upon, please state your name and affiliation before asking a question or making a comment. If you prefer not to speak today, you can email questions to the Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov email, and we will do our best to answer those today as well. This inbox is being monitored in real time, so if we see any questions and comments come through, we'll have Adelina flag those for us. And then Violet's going to help us cycle through any of the raised hands that we get in the Zoom meeting. So with that, I'll open the floor to questions from folks in the room.
Okay, so we do have a raised hand from Herman Barahona. I'm going to unmute your line. You do have to unmute on your end, but you should be able to do that now.
Thank you. Well, our question is, have you guys partnered up with any CDFIs or credit unions that are willing to support this process? So when people apply for the incentive, they have a soft handoff to somebody that can help them actually get an EV. Many of our folks, they're very low income, and going through traditional banking systems, it doesn't work very well. Is that something that's been explored in this project?
I can take that. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Nairn-Birch. I'm manager in the section overseeing Access Clean California. I think that's a really good question. I think the best thing to do is to probably connect you with some of the staff and potentially the program administrator that are actually administering and overseeing the implementation of the incentive programs themselves. So I'm talking about the Driving Clean Assistance Program, or DCAP, or the Clean Cars for All programs, because they're the ones that are doing this. And I know DCAP is certainly partnering with credit unions to offer their low interest loans. Access Clean California itself doesn't administer these incentives. They just help generate interest and get people, help folks get into the application process and through the application process. But if I'll get your contact information. We have all that information from the registering to Zoom, and I can help put you in contact with the relevant staff where you can get a little bit more detailed discussions on that. Does that sound good?
Yes, that sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. I appreciate it.
Okay, we have another raised hand from Jose Orozco Pelico. As a reminder, please state your name and your affiliation, and you're welcome to talk.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. This is more of a response to Herman. My name is Jose Orozco Pelico. I'm actually the AVP for clean energy lending at the USC Credit Union, and we are one of the, I believe, 6 credit unions under DCAP that are offering these low interest loans. So definitely interested in connecting, and anybody this call or just reach out, and I can provide also more information from the CDFI perspective.
Are you available in Sacramento, California? That's where I'm based out of. Yolo County, Placer County, and Sacramento County.
There are other credit unions that are available in that area, and I'll be more than happy to connect you with anybody in that region.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, our Vivian Raranji, please feel free to share your question or comment.
Yeah, what I want to say was for the gentleman who was asking about the credit unions, we do have Travis Credit Union who serves Sacramento and up north. So we'll be happy to connect them if they need more information about the credit unions that are partnered with DCAP for the finance and assistance portion of the Clean Cards for All.
Vivian, do you mind reminding folks of your position and the
Oh,
program?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, so
Thank
I'm
you.
so sorry.
No
This
problem.
is Vivian Rawanji from Community Housing Development Corporation, the admin for the Clean Cards for and Finance and Assistance program, and I'm the Chief Programs Officer here at CHDC. Thank you.
Hey, Vivian.
Hello.
Do we have any more questions for this round of Q&A? Not seeing any hands.
There are no emails coming through in the LCTI inbox.
Okay, we do have a couple more hands raised, and Vivian, I believe you've lowered your hand. Okay, so Herman, you're free to share your comment or question.
Yes, this is regarding the e-bikes. They go out like hotcakes. I get it, but if there's a way to figure out how to get the counties to, I guess, reserve for each county if possible, because we didn't even get to one here, and we had a lot of popular applications for those. But I don't know how that's playing out for the future since it's still not available.
Herman, that's a great question and good timing. There is a work group on that very topic, which I believe is next Wednesday, March 5th at 10 a.m. And if I don't know if you're familiar with CARB's website, maybe one of the staff can drop into the chat the link to where you can register for that. That's from 10 to 12, and they're going to be discussing that very topic about how to modify, address the high demand to distribute it more equitably.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and we have another question or comment from Marguerite Young. You're free to ask your question or share your comment.
Hi, thank you for taking my comment and holding this workshop. My name is Marguerite Young. I'm working with the Service Employees International Union, primarily local 2015, which is home care providers and nursing home workers. We've had more than or nearly 2,000 of our members go through income verification. More than half of those are at the, sort of lowest income level. And I just really want to hat tip to Celeste and the team at Access for the care which she was describing. I think she might have been describing one of our members. The thing that I want to share is when we got into this program at the beginning, it was very much with the idea that we wanted to make sure that our members didn't fall into a black hole at some point along the process, which is what the experience had been previously, and one of the key things that was identified in the barriers study. And on the one level, Access has generated much more outreach and awareness in priority need communities and among, our low-income families that desperately need better, more reliable and cleaner transportation. But our experience is that after the great work that Access does, the black hole still happens. We lose touch because of the barriers around understanding where our members are at in the process once they leave Access, that it's still, sort of very frustrating for our members because we don't know where they're at in the process, and we can't get that information. And so I'm just really hoping that the original idea for this project, which was a real true one-stop shop, not just fewer but still bigger silos, could become a reality. And so I'm a little frustrated with that, and it feels like we're, just moving the barriers around. So that's more of a comment than a question, but if somebody has something to, add to or share or comment back from that would be great.
Hi, Marguerite. I appreciate your comment. Both your comments. I really appreciate that insight and the frustration that you're sharing. As I mentioned earlier, I'm now the manager over this project, and I worked on it almost from the start. And as Catherine said earlier, certainly was our initial desire or objective in the beginning. Was to create a true universal application or a one-stop shop, as they say. So there's one application to all the programs, and streamline, simplify that process. It certainly is not for lack of effort that this did not come to fruition. I mean, we did work on this for years and years and years. And I think Catherine did a pretty good job of outlining why that was. So I don't necessarily want to rehash that. I think what I wanted to say is, yeah, I think we, lots of folks share that frustration, but it just creating that, and having tried to do it for so long, it really is, nigh impossible to make that happen. Certainly with the conditions that exist currently. So I think, where there is possibilities to streamline and simplify in a practical, achievable way. I think we're always trying to look to do that. Um, but um, but yeah, that's where we are. And I certainly understand your frustration. I think everybody would like to have an outcome like that, but it just proved to be too many obstacles to be able to achieve that. But where we can, we're always seeking to make improvements across all our programs. I think fundamentally at the core of this is coordination and really good communication across the projects, and making sure that clarity that comes from that goes to the communities and the applicants that these programs are serving. So,
Nick,
we're definitely endeavoring to that. Yep.
I have one sort of follow-up question to that, which is really an information request, which is that Access has provided, all of the information about applicants that are going into the various programs. Is there any way to get aggregated, non-identifying numbers of how many Access generated applicants made it through their respective programs, and to provide information on their FPL?
Absolutely. That's something that we can do. It's something that we're working on right now as well. So we can definitely provide that. I'm not sure the timeline on that, but that's something that we're working on.
To me, that's a
And
basic accountability thing,
no,
really.
no, absolutely. I hear what you're saying. So yeah, we'll be able to provide that. I can't give you the exact timeline, but it's certainly something we're definitely working on right now. One thing I will say is that's those numbers that we can provide for folks that have come through to the individual programs through the benefits finder and through Access directly. I do know that a good amount, I would imagine, applicants apply that are reached through the Access Outreach Partner Network more broadly. Some, apply directly to the program. So that would be a conservative estimate. But that's certainly something that we are working on to be able to provide.
Great.
Thank you.
Cool. Do we have any other questions before we go on to the rest of the presentation?
Currently, there are no raised hands. So.
Awesome.
And I don't see any new emails in the LCTI inbox for questions either.
Awesome. Okay, then let us move forward. There will be another opportunity for Q&A, so if something's percolating, you will get another chance. All right, so I'm gonna next go into the proposed adjustments to program process, but before we do get into those, I want to clarify the current process. So you heard a little bit about this from the grid team, but I'll recap it really briefly for everyone. So as you heard, the first step in the current program implementation process is that the Outreach Partner Network gets the word out to potential clients by doing outreach events, and supports them in using the Benefits Finder tool to check their eligibility for different incentive programs. And as you also heard from the grid team, this happens fairly quickly. Once they determine which incentive programs they're interested in, they follow the steps to upload the important documentation and fill out their application form. They then would submit this to the grid team, who then does the income verification. So often this includes some back and forth with clients who might have submitted the wrong documentation, or are missing items from their paperwork, or just need a little bit of extra assistance. After all the documentation is in and reviewed, the grid team will send the approval letter or a denial letter to that applicant. Then grid routes the income verification letter and the client information to the appropriate program administrators. So for example, a common one is they would forward the client onto the Drive Clean Assistance program, which is administered by CHDC. the client then would submit additional documents that each of the program needs. So this process can take 2 to 6 months, depending on each program's backlog. And the GRID case management team stays in contact with the applicant often and supports them in navigating the application process. So as you also heard from the GRID team, this can be very complex for some applicants and can take a lot of support. For some clients, they've had up to 100 phone calls. And a varying amount of texts and emails and other kinds of support as well. So this is really what the case management team is for, to help get folks who wouldn't otherwise be able to receive an incentive to the finish line and providing that extra hand. And in many cases, GRID's case management team is also taking the load off of the other program administrators' case management teams because they have some familiarity with the applicant and can help ease the process and really approach this from a collaborative standpoint. So now we'll discuss the proposed adjustment to program implementation. So the change that we're proposing to the program is to remove income verification from the services that the GRID team offers. And I first want to note that most things about how the program functions will stay fundamentally the same. The administrator team will still work with the outreach partner network to get clients in the door. They would still help them out in checking their eligibility through the Benefits Finder web tool. But moving forward, we're proposing to test a process where GRID no longer does the actual income verification, but simply supports each applicant in getting directly to the right application with the individual program administrators, and then still helping them along the way. So because GRID often does provide case management support to clients even after they have already been sent to the appropriate administrators to complete their application, they would still continue to do this, but now they would have additional staff resources to provide more enhanced case management and really direct their attention there. So we realize that removing income verification might sound like a little bit of a dramatic change, but we actually anticipate that it wouldn't be that disruptive of a change to program participants at all. There are some pretty significant benefits, which I'll go into on the next slide. So first, removing income verification from GRID's workflow would free up resources on their team. The income verification process has many steps and requires a lot of back and forth. So like I mentioned before, the other program administrators often repeat some of this back and forth once the clients are routed to them because they have sometimes specific documentation that they need for their specific programs. They might have to collect additional documents, and so it can take quite a while. Having GRID stop collecting and reviewing this documents from all applicants means that they'll have more time to assist the applicants that really need that extra hand and the extra support in figuring out how to fill out the complex applications. And from the applicant perspective, this will be a streamlined process. Like you heard, sometimes applicants are having confusion when they submit documents to GRID and then need to submit the same documents to the program administrator. And while we acknowledge this was never the goal of how things would work, the complexity of the programs in real life means that the best laid plans don't always work in practice. And so removing income verification from what GRID does will help clarify the roles between GRID and Access and the other program administrators. GRID's role would be to support the other administrators and the program applicants as they help them begin the first steps to apply to CARB's incentive programs, and overall result in a more seamless and simplified experience. So the Access team will also be able to increase the amount of funds that is going toward outreach. The team plans to direct additional funding into their contracts with outreach partners so that these organizations can provide more hands-on support to prospective applicants. Additional funding also means further expansion of the outreach partner network and the ability to get funding directly to even more community-based organizations. And ultimately, this means just more reach across the state and more applicants who need the programs hearing about them, which has always been a foundational goal of the program. Finally, I'll note that with this proposed change, the Benefits Finder platform will not go away at all. It will continue to be used by outreach partners as a tool to help people understand what programs they can qualify for and potentially stack. So overall, we believe removing income verification will enhance the team's ability to be nimble and to really spend extra time with the highest needs clients. Just revisiting briefly the original goals of the program, which were one, to provide tailored outreach and assistance to priority communities, develop a tool to increase folks' ability to access the incentive projects in the CARB ecosystem, and to support community-based outreach efforts to increase program participation. With those three goals in mind, we really think this change will help deepen equity by allowing the administrator team to focus on what they do best and provide that extensive support to people who might not be able to navigate these systems without an extra hand. In the process, this will also help out the other program administrators and help extend their capacity. So with that, that's the proposal. We are exploring what this could look like, and we want to invite you to ask any questions that you might have. We're also looking for feedback on this change. Do you agree with it? Do you have any concerns? We'd be happy to answer any questions about how this could impact the program moving forward and take any feedback now. So just a quick reminder that if you have a comment to share or you have a question, please raise your hand. For those calling by phone, you can dial #2 or #2. On Zoom, you can hit the react button on the bottom of the bar, has a little heart for the raised hand option. And so once you're called upon, please state your name and affiliation before asking a question or a comment, just for the public record. The Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov email can also be used for questions. So if someone's monitoring that in real time, we'll be checking on that. And then Violet will help us cycle through the raised hands and the emailed questions. So I do see one hand from Herman. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, Herman Barahona with the Sacramento Environmental Justice Coalition. I said earlier we cover Placer, Yolo, and Sacramento counties. Our little ecosystem here, when it comes to the banking industry, is pretty rough on our folks. And so income verifications or the method of verifying income can be very, sketchy. Although our partners will not be taking income data, we still need to figure out a way to get sworn statements to be counted as income. We have people who clean homes for a living, and they do odd jobs that don't pay in with pay stubs. That's our most marginalized folks, right? That are in the service industry, and banks are not very friendly to them. And we've actually walked a couple of our clients through a credit union to see if they would qualify to finance one of these vehicles. I mean, they wouldn't even let her open an account because she didn't have a social security number. So this is what we're seeing. And our largest service industry population here is in the tourism industry in Placer County or farm working communities of Yolo County. And Sacramento gets a little bit of both. They need transportation. Our public transportation here stinks. So anything that can help, I don't know, help with this income challenge, right? Or even verification or credit without high interest rates. There's a lot of predatory lenders here in Sacramento that are lending at 35% interest, and we're discouraging people from doing that. But that seems to be the only place where our folks with unusual income are getting loans, and at a very high cost.
Yeah, thanks for that, Arman. I think it is very complex, and income qualified programs are incredibly complex. And on the access front, that's what the case management team is there to help people navigate, really to help demystify the process of what qualifies for what and what types of income can be accepted for the different programs. And also what income counts to qualify a participant has been a really significant conversation over the development of all of these programs as they've gone from pilot to full-blown program over the years. And categorical eligibility for many social security-based programs is definitely something that qualifies many applicants for programs in the CARB ecosystem. I don't know if anybody would like to add on to that, but definitely take your comment on the challenges, and can certainly appreciate that it is incredibly complex and challenging for people to access resources.
Just I'm thinking out loud here. Can and the partners or the state come up with some financial agreement with a credit union to co-sign sort of for a block of money that would be addressed to, say, farm workers or cleaning janitorial workers, because that would make it a lot easier. And you would have a bunch of folks who need this kind of transportation. Has that been explored?
I mean, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying has been explored, but there's certainly a suite of programs that CARB has developed to try to get at that, and specifically the types of communities that you're referencing, not solely for those communities, but similarly, like similar communities that are high need, underinvested, historically underserved, lower income. We have a suite of programs that are aiming for that. We get funding for these programs every year through the state legislature, and we allocate and develop those programs each year through our funding plan process. And I can chat offline with you more about that, and help you familiarize yourself with some of those programs. I'm happy to have a one-on-one chat with you, or some fellow staff members can do that as well. So to point you in the right direction of what those programs are, and how your community members could access them if you'd like that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, anything that can break through this barrier, right? I mean, we get applications submitted, but we still haven't been able to celebrate somebody driving an e-vehicle, and we want to do that. And so we're trying to figure out a way to do it and find out something that works for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think yeah, let's chat. I think in addition to myself, there's probably a few a good amount of other folks too, representing different programs and such, that that I think you'd benefit from speaking with. But I'd love to maybe start a conversation with me, and we can see where it goes from there. See who I can connect you with. So I already told you I'll be reaching out, so maybe we can set up a meeting to chat more about this. So I really appreciate your input.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question and comments. Marguerite Young, you are free to speak. Share your comment or question.
Yeah, thank you. Again, Marguerite Young, working with SEIU all over California, primarily with our home care and nursing home workers who, like the previous speaker, occupy the lower echelons of the of income. I've been working with this program since it started. And income verification, as you all know, was an extremely high priority because it was one of the major hurdles and time delays in the process. And once GRID got the income verification thing rolling, it really made it, at least that part of it, to being ready to actually, to confirm eligibility to apply for a program, was like a major milestone. What you're proposing, though, how does it? I mean, you've referred to the income verification process as being complex and et cetera. It sounds like, again, we are going to make it harder, more complicated, less transparent, for those of us that are outreach partners, to understand what it is our members or constituents will need to do to get across that threshold. And if the requirements are different for each program, And if the income, what I've heard is that income verification that's done by GRID has not been accepted by programs as valid. I mean, I guess one answer would be stop, have that income verification process not be done by GRID. But it also makes me question, it's like, what are we requiring people to do to show that they don't make enough money, that they need a subsidy in order to get an electric vehicle? It should be as simple as you referred to categorical eligibility. And if that's actually true, all somebody needs to do is present their Medi-Cal card, basic or whatever, demonstrating proof that they are already a participant in a state program, whether it's, CalFresh or SSI or whatever it is, then yes, that does make it easier. What I want to understand is, how does it make it faster? And then the other question would be, and this I've never been clear on, is whether those who come through Access Clean California, come through the benefit finder, will get priority consideration in the programs. I mean, there are only 10 or 12,000 cars a year. And you correct me if I'm wrong about that. So, there's much more interest generated than there are actual, and people eligible than there are actually vehicles available. The funding goes on and off. The criteria changes. Those are all creating new barriers, not fewer barriers to participation. And a person that has a vehicle that's on its last legs does not have 2 to 6 months to wait. They need a vehicle, certainly within 2 months. The idea that you'd wait a year, we have members who have waited over a year in the program. So in the various programs. So I don't know. I'd like to hear what is being done to make the programs more efficient. Because if we're increasing outreach, we're generating, if there are, 10 million individuals in the state of California that would theoretically qualify for a subsidy, but only 10,000 vehicles a year, the math doesn't work the increasing outreach doesn't really help achieve the equity goals. So I'll stop, but again, my simple solution is that, and this doesn't help folks without Social Security numbers, but for anybody that's on, any kind of assistance, the state of California, why can't we just give them something that says you're eligible for a EV subsidy? And it gets administered through the counties, and we have an apparatus for eligibility workers in every single county in the state. And I know you've heard me say this before. And not utilizing those seems just like building more layers into the system instead of eliminating them. So I don't love the idea of income verification going away from GRID, but if income verification that GRID does isn't being used to confirm eligibility in the programs, then it's got to give somewhere.
Thanks, Marguerite. Yeah, you brought up a lot of good points. Hopefully I can touch on them, and I suppose there's some other folks here that can elaborate too. I will say just first of all that the income verification that GRID does it is accepted by the programs, but there are exceptions, and I think that's probably what you've heard or you've seen examples of, or exceptions when something happens and the income verification that Grid provided can be accepted for some reason, or there are some other issues. But fundamentally, it has been accepted. What we're seeing is, as Catherine pointed out, that the landscape of the incentives have changed, where the whole need for stacking, so folks that were applying to, say, Clean Cars for All and CVRP, that was a common case where they would have to verify their income twice. So having Grid do that really saved them time, and that was accepted by both programs. They wouldn't have to do it, verify their income twice. With CVRP gone, so there isn't really the need to stack. And so that's one of the reasons why the proposal is out there today too. In terms of categorical eligibility and income verification in general, so that with Grid giving it up, that's it's the individual program administrators will be verifying income. Most, if not all, do accept categorical eligibility. So they have lists of programs. They have the knowledge of what levels of income those programs are verified for, and folks can provide proof. Applicants can provide proof if they're eligible to those programs or already eligible to those programs, and they don't have to verify their income again. So that has been done. And is being done through programs where possible. Those programs also have been doing income verification for a long time, and have worked, to speed up the process. Now, I know it is complicated, but they have been working, to speed up those processes, and they're getting much more efficient with that. So that's something else that I wanted to touch on. Also, there are complications with categorical eligibility in terms of the varying income levels, and how they match up across programs. Even with Clean Cars for All, there are varying income levels that determine your amount. But I think, also fundamentally, you mentioned that there is high demand for these programs. Absolutely, there's high demand. There's not enough money to match the need. We are very much dependent on the budget every year from the legislature to get that funding to folks. But what we try to do is targeted outreach, and that's really, I think, what Access does, and a lot of the other programs like DCAP does as well. Is they do targeted outreach through community groups, so that they're not just reaching everybody, they're reaching the communities and providing the assistance and information to the communities who really think should be prioritized, and those that are underserved, so that they're the ones that have the extra help to learn about and apply to these programs. Prioritization is a very difficult thing to achieve when it comes to actually the order in which they apply, and moving folks around in that order that's very difficult. So I'm trying to touch on everything you covered. I know you covered a lot, but I see I don't know if there's some folks. I see Virgil's hands raised. I don't know, and Vivian as well earlier. If there's anything you guys would like to say about your program, DCAP, because that is a program that is a needs-based program that is getting at, Marguerite, what you mentioned about getting to the folks that really have the highest need. And that's really what the genesis or the main motivation of that program really is to get at that. So I don't know if there's anybody, Virgil or Vivian, if you'd like to touch on that part of it.
Yeah, can you all hear me?
Yeah, I hear you, Virgil.
All right, thanks, Nick. Sorry to cut you, Brett. I'll make this quick. Yeah, thanks, Herman and Marguerite, for the questions. My name is Virgil Looney, and I'm the director of the Driving Clean Assistance Program at Community Housing Development Corporation. And so I think DCAP is different from some of CARB's other incentive programs because the end goal, the purpose, is really focused on supporting folks and accessing clean vehicles, and then the way in which we do it is through is through economics, right? Because even when somebody gets an incentive, most folks still need a loan in order to purchase the vehicle. So to Herman's point earlier, we've got something called a loan loss reserve, which is a really that's a really helpful tool that we use to back our participants' loans, and it helps decrease the risk to the lenders. And then we also provide financial counseling. So we actually don't refer folks to our partner lenders unless they can demonstrate that they can afford the monthly car payment, right? Because we're not doing anyone any favors by getting them into a loan that then they can't pay back. That can create more problems. So Hermana, one of my team members, Jordan, she's gonna reach out to you so that we can get something scheduled so we can learn a little bit more about the communities that you're working with and just share some of those details about the loan loss reserve and also about how we're serving the folks that you were describing exactly. And then Marguerite, I think maybe one of the distinctions that I'd like to make is just the difference between being income qualified for an incentive program and then being able to get a loan. Because at the moment, CARB isn't providing incentives at a level that's essentially giving away cars, right? Most folks either still need to have savings or they have to be able to get a loan. And so I think that's one of the bigger barriers. So I don't think there was anything wrong with the way in which Grid was doing income verification. It was just solving a different problem. Because when you go to get a bank, when you go to a loan, sorry, when you go to a bank or a credit union to get a loan, they're often not really looking at your tax returns. They want to know how much money you're making monthly, like they're interested in pay stubs, that level of detail. And so that's the approach that we're taking, is helping folks demonstrate what their monthly income is, and then also helping them look at how they're spending their money to see if there's any kind of changes that they could make, which would essentially increase their monthly income so they could afford a car loan. And so this is I think this is a new approach. And again, still kind of the purpose, the problem that we're trying to solve is around increasing access to clean vehicles. But again, the barrier that we've seen is actually not so much about just qualifying for the incentive through CARB. It's about the next couple steps, which is about getting a loan and then finding a vehicle, because that can also be really challenging because most of the folks that we serve want a used vehicle. And so we're also taking a new approach of working with auto brokers who can source vehicles from across the state, which is really helpful for folks that live in more remote areas, where there's just fewer options for actual car dealerships, because we see that prices vary a whole lot regionally, and that's really based on volume and just like vehicles that are literally available in that area. But auto brokers can help us source vehicles from a much bigger area, from the entire state. So those are just a couple examples of what we're rolling out, and we're still really excited to be working with Access and with Grid on the outreach coordination, and are really excited to be working with their existing partners so that we can make sure that folks have all the appropriate, accurate information and can do the kind of support that Celeste was describing in the case management. All that's really helpful. And I think the truth is there's just no silver bullet. This takes a lot of different angles for it all to come together. But anyways, we're happy to chat, and I'm sure we'll be having a workshop at some to talk about decap as we continue rolling out. But in the meantime, I'll make sure to get your all's contact information so we can follow up directly. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Virgil. I'll hand it back to Violet. I don't know where we are in the line.
Yeah, we do have one hand raised from Brett Zuner. Please feel free to share your question or comment.
Yeah, more of a comment. Thank you. I'm Brett Zuner from the Foundation for California Community Colleges. We are one of the subcontractors on Replace Your Ride, as well as on Driving Clean Assistance Program, and also an OP of Access and various other projects, which I'm proud to say because I'm looking at the names on this call and recognize a lot of them, and I think we built this space. So I just wanted to first I think call attention to that as a win. So I actually started as a fellow 6 years ago at Grid, working on Access and the Benefits Finder. So to see, I feel like yes, representing the foundation, but also personally, like in that vantage, seeing the growth of this program and seeing how this ecosystem has changed, how CARB has changed and evolved and improved on all of this over those 6 years. I just wanted to recognize that, because I think it's easy to sit here and say like this should be different, this should be different, this should be different, and those are important. But I think also I can only imagine that it was hard to admit like we got to throw in the towel on this. A lot of time and money was spent. No one wants to admit that like something isn't working, but I do think it is, it is somewhat of a courageous act in and of itself to be able to say like what we tried to do isn't working and we're not going to spend more resources on it. So I actually am receiving this like positively, and I'm excited to see now where things go. And I think just in general in this space, we need to find ways to work together, and keep the focus on meeting the needs of those who need it most. Just this last year, I feel like there's been a lot of infighting amongst these programs, amongst people on the call. And I want to call attention to that too, because that brings us further from the mission as well. And CARB nor anyone else should have to be a referee between entities. So I think we all need to look inward on that and really think about what we're doing. But also, we talked about high need. I also want to mention that, like, even if the case management that Access provides, maybe at times it does make things tedious because you have more people in the mix. I would say, regardless of that fact, it's not just about the need. They're also bringing in people who don't have high trust in government. So that's important too. Like they're bringing in through their OP networks, through orgs like Marguerite and Jill at NAPEC and others, that Access has built these relationships and invested in. They're bringing people in who probably would never apply for a program. Maybe their life experience leaves them really just distrustful of government. And Access is able to bring those people in. So I feel like that's been a great win to see as well, because the relationships Grid has built. And I don't want to lose focus on the capacity building pilot. I would love to see more investment there because I think that was successful. We have orgs on this call and other calls that were not engaged with CARB prior to Access and now have sustained relationships with CARB. And I think that's a great win. I think we should be proud of that. I also have loved to see, I see Adelina on the call, and to have Adelina's position, now a funded position at CARB, and to see the investment CARB is making on all of this, I think is commendable. Like there are good things happening and we have the right people, and we're bringing even the people we don't have in the room, we're bringing chairs in for them and expanding the table. So I love to see that. The last thing I'll say is when it comes to, and I totally hear you, Marguerite, and I think, I mean, it's valid. Everything you said was totally correct. And I think I see it a little differently from my view now on the administration side of these programs, more than one of them. And then after this last CARB board hearing and everything that was said at that one, there is a balance between running your program with low wait times and running out of money and then having to close your program because you are so quote unquote efficient, or having long wait times, but your program still has money in the bank and is still funded. I don't think there's necessarily a better option. I think it's pick your poison, so to speak, because they both suck, right? A program opening and closing over and over is not good. And a program that, yes, it's reliable, but it's slow. Which is better, which is worse? I don't know. I'm not trying to make a value judgment on whether one is better than the other, but I'm just pointing out that that is the reality of our programs, is that if you run them too wide net or make things too efficient, we'll run out really quickly. Set asides are important. DCAP has the set aside for the highest tier of need. I also think if we want to implement things where people in very specific situations get priority, that's great, but we have to think about the documentation of that, who's reviewing it. So that's going to make things take longer. And things taking a long time isn't always bad. I look at what's happening at the federal level and it's like, is that efficiency? I don't know, but it's definitely causing harm. So that was a lot, but I feel like I needed to say all of it. We're never going to do this perfectly, but I just want to emphasize like we have made progress. I'm proud of Access. I'm proud to have been on Access. And I'm grateful that I've transitioned out to see this other view too, and to see the growth of it from the outside. But I really think the outreach partner network and the capacity building aspect of this, and then the case management for people who also high need, but also people who just don't trust us in government or proximate to government is important. So I'll leave it there, but thanks everybody for the space and time.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate that. And thanks, Virgil, as well. There's one thing that did come to mind in response to Marguerite and your comment about existing income data from existing programs for folks living in the state and not having to go back and verify their income again through one of our programs. There is an effort at the state level, the various agencies, especially those that have a lot of income data, either the franchise, the tax board or the social services, those programs. We are all talking. I don't know how long it's going to take, but we are looking into ways to where identity verification and income levels, income eligibility to low income programs, all that stuff can be centralized and automated. Again, there's probably a long lead time, a lot of complications with the technology and data security issues with that. But that's something that we are a part of and participating in. And when that gets to a point where we can operationalize that, we definitely will be doing that too. And hopefully that can mitigate a lot of the redundancies there. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, there's, benefits, I think, what is it? Benefits.ca.gov right now, where you do all of your HHS administered programs.
Yeah, exactly. And there are others too. And I think it's very much, I think we're now talking to each other as well, rather than all trying to do it on our own, which I think will help accelerate that process.
Do we have any questions or comments in the CTI inbox?
None as of yet.
Cool. Thanks to everybody who shared a response and your reflections. It's been a really good conversation. Do we have any more questions in the room? Okay. All right. Going once, going twice. All right. Well, I think we can start to close out if I don't see another hand in the next couple seconds. So, thank you so much for everybody who joined us today. I know it was a somewhat late afternoon meeting. So thanks for participating. Your thoughts and ideas were really great. I wanted to share a couple additional details before we close out today. So you can feel free to reach out to me or the Access Clean California Program Administrator team if you do have any questions or suggestions or follow-ups for the topics that were discussed today. So my email is catherine.canepa@arb.ca.gov. And the administrator email address where you can reach them is info@accesscleancalifornia.org. We will have both of those put in the chat. You can also submit additional feedback to the Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov email. I do want to quickly flag that we'll be having our Clean Transportation Equity Symposium on April 10th in downtown LA. The Eventbrite link to register for that will be dropped in the chat. This is a free event, and it's an opportunity for project administrators, community members, and stakeholders to continue to reflect on CARB's suite of equity-focused clean transportation incentive programs, which of course Access Clean California is one. So please do join if you are able. Since it's free, hopefully that reduces some barriers to attending, and we do also have travel scholarships available if that's an additional barrier. So you can email me if you're interested in one of those, and more information will be on the Eventbrite. We will aim to post the recording of today's work group in about 2 weeks. And just again, want to reiterate, we really appreciate your time today. We know you all have very busy schedules, so thanks for sharing your feedback and joining us, and look out for that recording soon. Thanks so much, everybody.